Hello everyone, welcome back to my channel. And for those of you with me for the first time, my name is Melissa Reed and I'm a mixed media artist. So for my last several videos, I did kind of like a three-part series on making some different collage papers. But I had this other idea. This is definitely a little different than the last three, which is good because you don't want to keep doing the same type of thing over and over again. But I kept thinking about using paper pulp, like if you would make homemade paper, to try to form it into designs and make some collage papers that way. I have absolutely no idea if this is going to work, but I have a few different methods, ideas in mind to give it a try, and I figured we're gonna go for it, and I'm gonna make the video either way. None of this was done ahead of time, and I have no idea what's going to happen. So let's see what we can make happen here, and hopefully at least one of them works. I do have a backup plan just in case. So I've got, let me move this out of the way. I've got this frame, this homemade paper making frame that I made a long time ago by deconstructing one of these super value canvases from Michaels. I just took all of the canvas off of it and was left with the frame. I bought a roll of window screening and stapled it on there, and it is very messily taped around the back. Most of the tape is coming off because, like I said, this is really old. But the way this works is you make your pulp, scoop some of the pulp on, and this is your frame, so this would be the inside the piece of paper. So if all else fails with what we're going to do, I have some ideas to do some paper this way. So again, we're just going to see what happens and go from there. So in front of me right now, I have a container of shredded paper. This has been soaking for, let's see, I think 2 days. Make sure everything is good and saturated. I have made homemade paper before and like didn't soak it at all, and you can do it, it's fine, but it's best if everything is completely saturated through. And this is just, be very careful when you're doing this that you're not getting any pieces of plastic in there. So I used my paper shredder, and sometimes I just put all of my bills and stuff through that. So you don't want any of the plastic windows in there, nothing plastic at all, just paper. So this is a variety of scrap papers that I had. I've got some parchment paper that we're going to work on. This is from the Dollar Tree. I got a 2-pack of these for I think $1.25, little like condiment squeeze bottles. This is a syringe that I bought off of Amazon. I will have links to everything that I can for you in the description of the video. And when I was in Dollar Tree looking for my condiment bottle, they had this cake decorating kit that has a nice tip on it too. So I'm going to see if any of these three work. And again, I have absolutely no idea. So we're going to just get started. So what I'm going to do is I have an old blender that was gifted to me that I use just for studio projects. We're going to get all of these paper shreds blended up, pardon my cat, and we're going to make our paper pulp. I'm going to separate it into a few different batches, and we're going to try some different things. One batch is going to have nothing in it but the pulp, and I think we're going to try some matte medium as a binder in another batch, and maybe just some acrylic paint as a binder in another batch. And we're going to see what happens. So I'm going to go ahead and get this blended up. I'm going to do that off screen so you don't have to hear the noise of the blender, and then I'll be right back with a batch of paper pulp. Okay, so I got all that blended up. It only took me a minute or two. I used the liquefy setting, and make sure there's plenty of water in your blender pitcher when you're doing it. And this is what I've got here. I'm going to show you the consistency. It's kind of like oatmeal, so very, very well blended into a really nice pulp. So that's kind of what you want there. And I've got, excuse me, I've got a lot of it here. So more than enough to do the experiments that I want to do today. So I'm going to go ahead and get started here. And I'm going to mix some of this with the matte medium, leave some of it plain, and use a little bit of acrylic paint to color and also as a binder in a little bit of it. So I'm going to go ahead and get started doing that right now. So I have in front of me some Liquitex matte medium. I have a little tiny bit left in that container on the left, and I'm adding roughly a cup of my paper pulp to another container, and I'm going to add a little bit of water to that, the dregs of that container there, and a little bit more from this container, probably about 2 tablespoons, give or take. So about a cup of pulp to 2 tablespoons of the medium. And I'm just making sure to blend that really well. Now, if you have an immersion blender, that would be a really good use for this. I don't have one that I'm willing to sacrifice to the studio, so we'll just mix it by hand. And I am very messily pouring this in. This is an extremely messy project, I should mention, so be prepared. Make sure your surface is covered and that you don't have anything around that you don't want glopped up, because I definitely made a giant mess doing this. All right, I'm setting down an old towel. Again, definitely use something that you don't care about. I have some dedicated studio towels, and that's what this is. So I'm just now using my squeeze bottle to lay out some of that paper pulp mix on top of that screen form that I have. If you don't have a screen form, I suppose you could probably use like another old tea towel or something to lay the paper pulp onto. The screen works because it's going to allow that liquid to come through, and I turned it over and I'm just blotting it just like you would with traditional paper making, if you've ever done that before. And that's what I'm left with. I have it on the parchment paper because that's going to allow me to pull that up very easily once it's dry. Okay, for the second round here, I'm using the same mixture with the matte medium and the paper pulp, and I'm just putting it into this large syringe that I have here. I just want to see if there's any difference in application. I don't know what's going to happen here, so I'm just trying to do a circle pattern now just to get a little bit of difference in some of the papers if possible. It's going down fairly well. It does splatter a bit. There's not a ton of control. So if you're looking for something more controlled, I would say this is probably not a great method for that. But if you like the look of the rustic kind of edges and, you know, handmade, this would work. Again, I'm flipping that over and using some towels just to blot out any excess moisture. And when you pull that screen up, it releases the paper perfectly. I'll show you here. We're going to just set that off to the side to dry with the other one. And now I'm going to give this pastry bag a try. This, like I said, I got at the Dollar Tree along with my condiment bottles. And this is definitely the one that I had the least amount of success with. I don't know if it's just because of the nature of a pastry bag or if it's just the quality of the one that I got, because I paid $1.25 for it, you know. It was just kind of a last minute idea. I saw it and very, very hard to control. And when I squeeze it, it kind of just wants to explode out of the sides. So, I mean, it does create a paper there, but probably no better than I could have done just with my hands, or definitely with the syringe or the condiment bottle. So, I don't know that I would necessarily recommend that one. So this is after everything has dried here. I let that dry, I believe, overnight. And the parchment paper is letting that release very carefully. I'll take you in and show you what I have there. I really like it. It's kind of pliable because I added the matte medium to it. So handmade paper can be pretty stiff, as I'm sure you know if you've made any of it. But that's what we got. And on the back side, there's a slightly different design. On the front, you can see the marks from the screen, but on the back, it took on any wrinkle that was in the tissue paper, or in the parchment paper, obviously. And this was the one that we did with the syringe, with the circles on it. Same thing, screen print on the front and texture on the back. You can see it a little better up against the black background there. I like the way it turned out. Again, definitely you're not going to get a lot of fine detail, but for what it is, if you're just looking to have some cool textures and an interesting piece of paper to add to one of your collages, any of these would really work. This was the one with the pastry bag. I would say definitely the least successful, but I do kind of like the shape of the paper, but you know, way less control than using the bottle or the syringe, and you could have gotten a similar design. So these are the three all together here that I'll show you. All in all, pretty cool, but I'm really excited to try the next idea that I had, which is adding some acrylic paint. So into my container, I'm adding roughly another cup of the pulp mixture there. Because I've been pouring it out, obviously a lot of the liquid is coming out first, so I do end up adding a little bit more water to this just to make it a little more flowy. I'm adding roughly a tablespoon, maybe not even, maybe half a tablespoon of Liquitex Basics Quinacridone Magenta, and making sure that's getting stirred up really well. That's just a bamboo skewer that I have lying around in my studio that I use for all sorts of things. That is Liquitex Fluid Acrylics Burnt Sienna there. I wanted to mix those two together to try to get like a nice terracotta color, because this will lighten up a little bit as it dries, and that is exactly what I got. I'll show you here in a few minutes. Again, make sure those are really well mixed. And that's where I added just a little bit more water because the consistency was getting a little too thick, and I didn't think it was going to come out of my various containers there with the same amount of ease that it had with the other batches. You can see I'm wearing gloves for this one. Honestly, I should have been wearing gloves for all of them. And I would highly recommend that you do that because, again, this was messy, messy, messy. I don't mind because I have a dedicated area, but yeah, huge mess everywhere. So again, I'm going over top of my screen and just squeezing some of that out with the condiment bottle. I'm kind of making a frame with those lines now and going in and just making some rectangular areas that I then fill in with a little bit of the paper pulp. I just wanted to see about getting a little bit different of a design there and see how much control I could actually get. It really seems like the condiment bottle is the best tool for getting the most amount of control. Now, I mean, obviously you're not going to be able to draw a detailed picture. It's not that much control, but you can get what you're going for here, which is just large basic patterns and shapes. So again, I'm turning that over and blotting it. You can see I had some shop towels on just to protect my old towel there a little bit. I mean, some of that still went through, but I don't care. It's an old studio towel. I'm lifting off the screen and that's what I'm left with. So we're going to set that guy aside to dry and move on to the next one. So this is the syringe that I'm doing here, and this one made such a huge mess. I had that red paper pulp everywhere. I had a huge splatter that kind of got away from me. So once again, I cannot stress enough how messy this is. And this is really just not working very well in the syringe with this. I mean, it works to a degree, way less control than the condiment bottle. And honestly, if I had to hope for an outcome, it would have been that because those condiment bottles are so easy to come by. You probably have one laying around, or you will empty something out in your fridge that you can reuse rather than ordering something off of Amazon. But I thought it was worth a try. I just wanted to see if maybe one would be better than the other, and I found out it definitely is, and it is the easiest of the three, which was the condiment bottle. So there's that. I'm just blotting there again, and we are left with that design. Kind of a mess, but we'll see what happens. It was at this point that I remembered I had this little tub that I could work in, so wish I would have thought of that about an hour ago, but here we are. So anyway, this is helping me contain the mess a little bit. Now I am just going through and laying a whole bunch of that red paper pulp down, and I'm using an old gift card just to kind of spread it out. So this is basically mimicking the kind of layer of pulp that you would have on there if you were doing traditional paper making, which you could actually do with this step if you wanted to have a bin of water with the pulp floating in it. You could do that. Now, because I have the paint added to it, it might thin out the color. So if you don't want the color to be diluted, then I would go this way and apply the pulp directly to the screen rather than floating it in water. You might have noticed me sprinkling some water on there. I was just trying to see if I could get a watermark design, but it didn't really work very well. But I'm doing this the same way. I am turning it over on a piece of parchment paper to protect my towel a bit and just sopping up any excess moisture gonna lift that up. Now, that's not very exciting as it is, but I decided to take a toothpick and just go in and create little cavities, little voids there to make a very distressed kind of holy paper. Now, I made something similar to this in my last couple of videos. If you want to go back and take a look, I will have links for those in the end there, because you might find those interesting if you're finding this one interesting. But I like the way this one looks a lot. So I'm going to go ahead and set that aside and let it dry. And we're going to do one more. I kind of had another idea. So I am laying straight pulp down. There is nothing added to that. No acrylic binder, no paint, nothing. Just plain pulp. And again, I'm going to spread that out a little bit. And if you watched my last video, I was using some threads in my collage papers, and I got some really, really cool results. Again, that'll be linked for you if you want to check those out. I'm embedding those threads in the paper, and I'm making sure to push a little bit of that pulp over the top of them to really ensure that they are embedded in there and they're not going to just be laying on the top and fall off. So once those are down there, I decided I wanted to add some color to this. So I'm using acrylic ink. I've got Rowney turquoise and Antelope brown because I used those in a piece last week and loved the color combination. Very beautiful together. Make sure you shake those up really well, incidentally. So those colors are not spreading out that well, so I went ahead and sprayed them down with some water and just to get them flowing a little bit. And I'm going in with my toothpick again to create some more holes and voids just to make the paper look a little bit more interesting. Flattening that down with my parchment paper. And you can see all of the liquid that I have left in that tub. Don't worry, I did not waste that. I actually put that in a container because it is essentially just a homemade color of acrylic ink that I can use. Let me get that dried off a little bit more there and show you what we have. Now I did pick up a little bit of the red that I had left on the screen on that bottom left-hand side, you can see, but you know, that's all right. It's just a test piece and I don't really mind it. It kind of looks cool. I'm just going in and making a few more holes in this piece. I'll show you what we have here. It's pretty cool. I really like the way that looks so far. And the next day, this is everything ready to be peeled. Be careful when you're doing this. They do come off of the parchment very easily, but these are also pretty fragile and there's a lot of little weak spots in them where there's not a ton of pulp holding them to the next piece. So just be careful. I have found that I got better results if I went up underneath the piece rather than trying to pull it from the top. So if I worked my hands underneath it, and then eventually if you actually just flip it over and peel the paper off of it, way easier. I'll show you there. So that first piece was the squeeze bottle pattern. This is the syringe. Kind of interesting. I could see that working in a collage. Like used as a whole entire piece there. I mean, I don't know that I would necessarily break it apart, although you could. I mean, that entirely is an artistic decision, and you could make that based on what you're doing. But you'll see here, I end up flipping this one over because it is very, very lacy and delicate. And you can just peel the paper right up if you do it that way. So I would highly recommend doing that. I love that piece. It's one of my favorites. It's just such a delicate, kind of lacy, but yet distressed look. Totally up my alley. And that one's really pretty too. Now that's the one that I didn't add any binders to. I did add the color in afterwards, and it is very thick and much less pliable. And I'm wondering if that's not because I didn't use any binders or if I just had a little more paper pulp, so it's thicker. Hard to say. But anyway, here's what we ended up with. And I really think this was a fun project, and I will definitely be doing it again. Let me know what you think, and if you liked it, give me a thumbs up, and thank you to everybody who's been subscribing and doing all of the hyping and all of the YouTube things. I really appreciate you. But let me know what you think of these. I mean, I think they're kind of cool, and I look forward to using them in some kind of a design with you in the future. I do want to mention real quick, I'm going to be running a sale on my Etsy shop starting next Wednesday. It's going to run Wednesday through Cyber Monday. So I'll remind you again in next week's video, but I wanted to put that little bug in your ear now just to let you know. And there are links to all of my other social medias, including my Etsy shop, in the description of my video. But thank you all so much for hanging out with me today. I really appreciate each and every one of you, and I look forward to coming back with another video for you next Friday at 10 a.m. Eastern Time. Thank you so much and have a great week.